If everybody's good, we'll stand for the pledge, please. All right, everybody, welcome to our joint meeting. Very fun. Sunny's going to do a roll call for us because Kathy is out and about.
So, Mayor Strite's here. I need to grab my pen. Alderwoman Seaman? Absent. Alderwoman Bardison?
Here.
Alderman Deskin?
Here.
Alderwoman Bergbauer?
Present.
Alderman Glogally?
Here.
Alderman McDonald?
Here.
Alderman Karas?
Here.
Alderman Pugh?
Present.
And quorum present.
All right, I see Lou's in the house. Can open us in a prayer.
I'd ask you, if you'd pray with me. Almighty God, we thank you for the many blessings in our life. Father, for the blessings of liberty and freedom that you have done and all the things you're going to do in our city. Help us to bring honor to you in all we say and do. We ask you for the riches of your provision to rest upon our city, our elected officials, our employees, volunteers, businesses, and families in our city. We ask for your hand to be upon our police, our fire and military. Protect them on and off duty. Give them wisdom in each situation. Bring them home safely. Keep our families safe. We ask you to protect our schools and our city from acts of violence. We pray for our mayor and our city council that you would graciously grant them wisdom to lead our city, insight, in taking action that will benefit the city of Lockport now and in the future. The ability to work in harmony and unity, personal peace in their lives, families, and joy in their tasks. Help us each day to do and say what we would want to do to others, do unto us. We ask this all in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lou. All right, friends, are there any liaison reports?
Yes, sir.
Lay it on us,
I have a
Joanne.
couple of them.
After
Oh,
these. I'm going to do it. So,
Oh, we gotta
Planning
do
and Zoning
everybody?
Commission, but I don't know if you want to do it after the, well, we'll do the Planning and
can do it
Zoning
now.
Commission. So, Chairman Oxley.
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler. Here. Commissioner Garland. Here. Commissioner Maloney. Here. Commissioner Peters. Here. Commissioner Likens. Here. And our new Commissioner Kyle Quinn, who has not been officially adopted, but here, right? So quorum present for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right. We're all good now? Thank you, Darren. No, I didn't realize. So go ahead, Joanne. What do you got?
all righty. Okay, just got a couple announcements. One, I'll start with the beautification recognition. We're in full bloom. I see the landscaping's going up and already in bloom. So please send in your pictures of your homes. We'd love to be able to recognize you on TV at one of the July, I believe, July or August meetings. We'll let you know the exact date. So please send in 4 pictures, go online, and we'll be glad to recognize you, okay? And neighbors can, and aldermen, persons, please, if you have neighbors that you'd like to nominate, please do so. The more, the merrier. And don't forget, we have special prizes for first, second, and third. So we're going to be doing a little bit of homework and picking out the 3 top, and you'll get gift certificates to our local restaurants. Okay. Okay, so that's number 1. And then Old Canal Days. It starts on Saturday, June 8th at 5 p.m., and it runs through Sunday. On Thursday and Friday, there's food courts and bands. And finishing off on our Saturday, there are also tours of the cemetery, and historical trolley will be touring, and also there'll be a tour of Central High School. On Sunday, once again, there's the festivities with the carnival and all that, and then ending Sunday night at dusk, around 9:30, fireworks. That'll end the Canal Days for the year.
Right on. Looking forward to it.
Okay?
All right, anybody else got anything?
I got a few things. First of all, reminder, we have 1 week left to order rain barrels or composters. The city of Lockport partnered with the Conservation Foundation to provide these, and the Lockport is subsidizing 50% of the cost on these. You have up until the 13th to get your order in, and then you would pick these up from Public Works between the 19th and 23rd. What's that? You place order online. It's a pretty long website, so I didn't want to read it off. So go to City Lockport website to find that website to order them. So please help Lockport be green. Construction-wise, Austin Tyler is working on 16th and Madison. They have finished all storm and water. Concrete, curb and sidewalk has started as well there, and they will be doing that probably for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Gallagher Asphalt has started their resurfacing project. They began down on 2nd Street in preparation for Canal Days. They did a small area. If you look down there, nice little parking lot across from the Heritage Village, which is very nice. They will be moving on to Bruce Road on Friday, and then they will be into Karen Springs next week. What's the next one? Also, Gallagher Asphalt has our Quiet Zone 9th Street crossing with the one underneath the bridge. They are planning to do that, start that after Canal Days, sometime before the end of the month. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're hoping to get Gallagher working on that project. Also, construction has finally begun on the Bridge Street lift station. And finally, I want to thank Public Works in advance for all the work they do for Canal Days. They put in a lot of hours in preparation during the whole Canal Days and even afterwards. So thanks, Brent, to his crew for that.
Right on. Thank you, JR. Anybody else?
I've got a couple items from the police liaison report. First item, Lockport officers took part in the Illinois Department of Transportation Click It or Ticket campaign as part of their Memorial Day enforcement campaign, which ran from May 19th to May 29th. This consisted of 49 hours of seatbelt enforcement and 32 hours of impaired driving enforcement, with a total of 97 citations being issued to violators. On May 19th, the Lockport Police Department took part in the Special Olympics Cop on a Rooftop fundraiser, which had taken place at both of our Lockport Dunkin' Donuts locations. This fundraiser raised $7,727 for Special Olympics. And yesterday, Lockport officers also took part in the Special Olympics Torch Run, which takes place every year in an effort to raise funds for Special Olympics athletes.
Right on. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rich. Thanks to the department for just being part of the community, man. Staying tight with everyone. We appreciate that. I know today we had a meeting and Pat was there. Just a heads up, we started getting some inquiries from a few solar panel users to either lease property at the Chevron site or do cost sharing with energy sales. So it's interesting. I mean, they're just looking at acreage, thinking they can produce about 3.2 megawatts or so. We'll see. I'm just giving you guys a heads up that people are seriously looking at it, though, for that use. Not the whole site, partial use of it, so. All right. Lance, what do you got going on today?
Thank you, Mayor. We want to present the Homes for a Changing Region Master Plan. This was a master plan that was funded by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. This was no funding from the city, but they combined both the MMC as well as CMAP, which is the Chicago area or Chicago Metropolitan Area for Agency for Planning, as well as IDA, the Illinois Housing Development Authority. We put together a focus group. You see them listed on your screen, represented a whole variety of different people and organizations within the city that provided a lot of unique different perspectives as we went through all of the different planning options. Two real components to this. One was a housing needs analysis, and then the other one was recommendations for improvement. So just to give you some overview of the housing needs analysis, there are 3 different things that were identified. The first one being that Lockport's population is slowly aging in place. You can see the graph on the right-hand side of the screen that shows that 12% to 18% in the 50 to 64 age range, and the 10 to 11% shift in the 65 plus age range. And this is actually, interestingly enough, pretty consistent with what the high school's demographer found out when he did their forecasting study that ended last year but started in 2021 or 2020. He was finding that mostly in general for Homer Glen, Lockport, and Crest Hill, many of our older generation are staying in their homes. They're not selling. The typical model would be is you get to a certain age, you move to Florida, you move to Arizona, you sell your house, you go to something lower maintenance. We're finding that that's not really happening, and so it's causing a couple different things. The first thing is that it challenges younger home buyers to come into the community and buy those homes that are then vacated, because they're typically older homes or homes that need some work or different things like that. They're not the brand ones that are higher value, and so that allows younger families to be able to get into those communities. And then it also challenges on the corollary side, the apartment side, because if those younger families want to be here but they can't find a house, they'll oftentimes rent until they can get something in the community. I know that when we moved to Florida after graduation, that's what we did. We moved into an apartment until we could find a place to buy while we were down there. But so that's an interesting outcome of the study. The second one is that we need more rental units at the lower end of the spectrum and the higher end of the spectrum. And this is interesting because the middle end of the spectrum, we're actually really well covered, which a lot of communities aren't. So when you hear the term missing middle housing, which is basically for all of the residents or people who make median wage incomes for their households, those are typically the missing middle audience. And a lot of communities don't have housing for them because their houses have gotten too expensive, or they have not gotten anywhere nearly expensive for them to be able to afford, and they don't want to move into those homes. So it's unique and it's good that we have captured a fair amount of the market. You can see 2 graphs on your screen right now. One shows the number of owner-occupied housing by housing type. So that looks at single family, it looks at townhomes, and it looks at multifamily. Multifamily would be defined as Highland Ridge type things or Lockport South type things. 80% of our housing stock is single family. It's super consistent with nearly all of the growing suburbs from the 2000s. You know, when Plainfield was growing, Shorewood was growing, you name the suburb in the southwest and west suburbs, it's the same model. So many single-family homes. We have very low townhome rate and a low multifamily rate, which is why you're seeing demand and builders who are interested in building townhomes and multifamily here. So the Continental project that'll be before you here in a couple of months, that's one end of that, to be able to take care of some of the demand that's there for the higher end of the market, and then looking at different ways that we can approach the lower end of the market to try and raise all tides. So you can see kind of the result of that, all the math that's up above, but lots of residents are cost burdened by their housing, and it's primarily based on their analysis, service industry folks. So the people that are working at our QSRs, the quick service restaurants, people that are waiters and waitresses, things like that, those are the folks from a buying a house standpoint that are cost burdened. So when we say that they're cost burdened, the typical number that somebody should shoot for when they look at their mortgage or their home price is 30% of their gross income. That's how much you should be spending on your house in order to just financially plan appropriately for your family. When you start to get above 30%, or you even get above 50%, that's when you start to financially challenge, because then you can't afford utilities, you can't afford your grocery, you can't afford some of those other wants as opposed to just all the needs. So you can see in that second bullet point, The percentage of renters in unaffordable housing right now, which is 30 to 50% of that household income, increased from 18% in 2010 to 25% in 2019. That's a 2.5 times increase in that period. And the percentage of renters in severely unaffordable housing increased from 18% to 27%. Those are significant jumps, and so when you think about our populace here in Lockport, know that not everybody can truly afford where they're living, and so how do we start to find ways to mitigate some of that? So that was some of the next part of the study. So, and the last kind of outcome of the study was that we are a semi-built-out community. There are not a lot of large parcels of land left that aren't already incorporated. So we have some unannexed, unincorporated portions of the city, primarily along the Archer corridor, but there are not a lot of large, readily developable parcels within the city. And so when we have looked at new subdivisions, or even some of those that are interested in bringing some of those parcels into the city, as many of you have looked at in the past, how do we grow smartly? That's not even a word, but how do you grow smart so that you don't overburden our infrastructure? We did that infrastructure study in 2019, 2020 that showed the cost of expanding infrastructure out to single-family homes, but also how do we start to be able to provide housing for all different income levels. And you've heard me talk a lot about that as we've gone through the years. Over on the right, you can see again that housing type number. That's raw numbers. So 7,470 homes in 2010 and 7,819 homes in 2019. So those are individual units. So the summary of the analysis portion is, from a pro standpoint, we have a really good rental inventory for the largest portions of our residents, which is those middle income folks, the 20,000 to 100,000 household income. The city has additional rental units that recently opened in Highland Ridge and are more are coming online. Redwood is slowly but surely coming online. Just as an example of that, for those that didn't attend the grand opening, they already have 28 folks moved in when we were there, probably more now. They had a 45-person wait list. So there is a lot of pent-up demand that is waiting to move into places like this, and so we're starting to serve that end of the market, which is great. And the city has a stable population that enjoys the city and prefers staying over moving, which is great, but it also challenges, like that first comment that I made about folks not wanting to move out of their house to some other place. From a con standpoint, a negative standpoint, we are likely not providing the resources to reach out to those that need it most. And we don't have resources here in the city outside of our own staff and interactions with them, but connecting them with county resources, state resources, federal resources for home improvements, whether that's roofs, windows, things like that. There are rental assistance programs, mortgage assistance programs that are available out there. So that's one of the key takeaways that we took out of this. We are combined by a challenge of residents wanting to stay in their homes longer and fewer affordable homes for purchase. So when we look at our new homes that we're bringing online right now, they're very high value. And as many people noted on the panel, we have a really tight existing home market right now too. You've probably seen some for sale signs. When we were doing this, there was nothing out there. People were offering above asking price. It was a very tight market, as it was in many places, but we experienced that a lot. And then the last one is new developments recently have been high-priced single-family homes and high-priced townhomes. You've all heard me tell the stories that, we have townhomes that are going for $500,000 and $600,000. We have homes that are going for $800,000. Those require households with incomes greater than $150,000 to reasonably afford. Does that mean that there aren't some people out there that are throwing whole hog all of their income into it? Probably are, but the vast majority of them are owned by people that can afford it. So the recommendations, 3 recommendations, one slide got missed, so I'm going to capture that just verbally. Preserve our rental housing through our comprehensive rental framework. We met with some folks from Mount Prospect that operate their rental housing program. They've been good contacts for me to be able to reach out and talk about the programs that they have. They're a little bit bigger, so they have some more resources that they can provide, but it was informative for us. The 4 recommendations underneath that relating to adding some advocacy portions to our rental program, connecting the residents and the landlord with those social service providers, utilizing the court and adjudication system, and then providing the continuing education. The great news is that we have started a lot of those things. So our landlord Facebook page is fairly regularly used. We now have quarterly presentations that we're making with different people in the city, but also outside of the city. I copy you on a lot of those. You can see the links in the presentations. And then we also have improved code enforcement on a lot of these things. So you all passed an ordinance that allowed us, for those that hadn't paid their registration, to go and inspect those homes. It was extremely valuable in being able to get nearly every rental at least started in the registration program. So that has really helped. In fact, the vast majority of those that we scheduled an inspection for never happened because they were able to register the house before we got to the point of showing up on site. So thank you for that. We appreciate that. Using low-income housing tax credits. This is something that has been kind of in our world, or at least being discussed, about how we can start to help those folks that are on the lower end of the spectrum. There are 2 projects on the lower portion of that screen that represent what some of those LIHTC tax credits can do for developers who know how to use that system and be able to utilize it. If you looked at those buildings from just general public view, you would never know that they had low-income housing tax credits. But they are fully managed, they are fully operated, fully maintained by organizations that understand that process, are able to leverage that as a part of their capital stack to be able to develop these properties that really are just as much quality as any other product that you'd see out there that we would approve on a normal basis. So, you know, we're starting to look at that. We're actually starting to hear from some of these folks as well about whether there's any interest in us engaging in. It does not mean Section 8. So just to be clear, that's always what comes up. Every time you say the word rental, everybody thinks it's going to be drug dealers, Section 8 folks, and other people that are doing bad stuff. It does not mean that. Low-income housing tax credits are just simply a portion of that capital stack, but it requires you to serve a certain portion of the population as well as having market rate facilities within the same building. And the last one, that was a recommendation that came out of it that I didn't have the slide in here for, was trying to find pre-approved housing plans that basically when a small builder or somebody like that wanted to come into the city, we could show them a group of 8 different housing plans that were already paid for. They were already designed. They would come with no building permit fees. They would come with no review fees because we would have already accomplished that somebody could literally take off the shelf and go out and build. Combine that with the work that we did with Taft and Kelvin Grove school districts to reduce our impact fees for our existing areas in those 2 districts, and we can shave up to $15,000 to $20,000 off a builder's cost. So when I talk with builders, a lot of times they can't even build a house for less than $300,000, not even remotely close. But can we start to shave off some of those dollars to start to bring it within the realm of possibility without sacrificing anything from the city, because we have existing infrastructure, we have existing streets that when you look at an impact fee, there is not the same impact as there is when you build a new road or you put new pipe in. So those are some of the things that we're looking to at least explore. There is a group that was part of the presentation panel that provides those pre-approved housing plans. They would come in all shapes and sizes, be consistent with our design guidelines, but be able to approach that from a cost-effective standpoint. So those are some of the things that we're looking for. I'd be happy to take any questions.
In the documentation that we looked at, you mentioned seniors, and I think, I think most seniors sell and then they move to Florida. There are some of us that would like to stay here because we have kids and grandkids. In the report, it talked about the senior market, but not necessarily the housing where people would sell their homes that require maintenance and move to something that doesn't require maintenance, like a Carolina or something like that. What's the thoughts in that regard?
So I would say that we have a couple different opportunities for those, and more will come. Lago Vista obviously serves a broad portion of our senior 55 and older mix. We have a Gale Gardens is another development that actually does have some low-income housing tax credits associated with it. Very few people even know where it is, but they have a waiting list and have had a waiting list since the day that they opened 30 years ago or 20 years ago. They've been there forever. Really quality developments. Redwood, as they all told you when they came through for their presentation, their development planning, their primary audience is the 53-ish average age. Highland Ridge right now is 53 average age based on some of the demographic information that they're sharing with us. So that is where a lot of our folks are migrating to within that. The component that we're really missing is the memory care, assisted living, facilities like that where let's just say somebody in Lago Vista, a couple, one of them needs those specialized services, the other one wants to stay close, but they're not quite ready to move into a facility like that. Having that in the community provides a really nice service for lots of folks that are aging, that one or the other spouse or neighbor or friend or whoever needs some of those services. We just don't have that right now in the community, and it's something that we are really trying to aggressively find, and we have had a couple folks that are poking around to try and meet that market demand. So that's an important piece of it. The thing to note about our senior market in particular as it relates to the study is the vast majority, I think it's over 50% of those that are under $20,000 household income are seniors. And they're fortunate because a lot of them don't have any mortgages and they don't have those costs that burden them, but at the same time they don't have a lot of extra cash to be able to afford all the things that go with that. So that is a very large portion of that lower end income range. So when we talk about providing facilities like the Shorewood Horizon or the Prairie Trail at the Landing in New Lenox, those types of things are where those people can get out from under the maintenance burden that they have with their house and get into a facility that is, more conducive to their skills and abilities.
Could I just ask, Lance, the pictures that you're showing right now, those are like 2 stories or maybe 3 stories. It's hard to tell, but seniors, unless there's an elevator unit, it's really tough. I don't know how well some of these, unless people are in good health and are able to take the stairs, we need more 1-story facilities than the 2 or the 3, unless there's elevators that are going to be put in for those seniors that have a little bit of a problem walking or taking the stairs. I think we need to concentrate on that too,
Yeah.
And it looks like we're going in the right direction, but when these builders approach us, we need to let them know that that's where the population is going.
Right.
If people want to stay in Lockport, there's very few places that are just 1-story little ranches, what they call villas in some areas.
Yep. Yeah, both of those developments are senior housing, and they are both full and have waiting lists that come behind them. But the folks that we have been talking to are some of the single-story residence folks, because they also have some of the memory care portions associated with it. And Redwood is a really good model, even though it's not senior restricted or offers some of the skilled services. It's all single floor. It's all in slabs. There's no basements. There's none of that. And so it makes it very easy for someone who's looking to transition to a maintenance-free model or a rental model to be able to make that move. Good point, though.
So I have a question. So what we're seeing on the screen right there, was that in R3 or an R4 type zoning?
In our community, the one on the right would for sure be, actually, if they are senior with some level of skilled care, it's really a commercial zoning because it doesn't really fall within our residential zoning categories because there are business, it's a pay-for service. It's not something where, they're just either renting out a room and have the option to go or whatever. When you start to add that memory care component to it, where there are actively nurses on the floor and things like that, that starts to get into our C2 zoning or C3 zoning, C2 primarily. The one on the left could probably be more focused on an R3 or even an R2 because there's not a lot of density on that one. But that one doesn't have those skilled care or the memory care.
Well, we don't, it's great to have skilled care, but then we also, it doesn't provide the need for the 25 to 35-year-olds, okay. The reason why I asked the question is we do have one large tract of land that is currently zoned R3 and R4, and I'm going to assume, when, of course, one should never do that, that would be the ideal place for something like this, because everything else would have to be rezoned.
I assume you're talking about the property that's
163rd
east of
Street.
east of Gauger, north of 163rd.
Yeah.
So that's accurate, and if and when somebody comes through, that will be a discussion point for both the Plan Commission and the City Council because those agreements have expired. And the original agreement was for condominiums back in 2006, Dave, when that came through, and it was specifically prohibiting apartments from locating there. And so that would all need to be renegotiated as a part of any development. But it would still retain the zoning that you're talking about.
Lance, what's the status on Serenity Springs? Where are they at? What's going on?
So we just, actually, funny you ask, we just met with them this morning. They are looking to begin work on the northern pod, basically the portion that abuts Bruce Road, as well as the apartment section that is along Briggs, looking to get that started and submitted to start the review process in August or September, with the hopes to break ground in the spring of 2024. They are actually looking at a single-family rental product, which is something that is, I don't want to say sweeping the nation because I think that's a little too broad, but that is something that is becoming extremely popular and, again, can be part of that diversity of housing piece that we can offer in our community that we don't currently offer outside of single-family homes in the downtown area that are rented out, or others in some of the other subdivisions as onesies and twosies that are rented out as well. So they're looking at that.
So I'd say, a couple challenges was when we walk around our neighborhood, there's clearly houses that are half the size of this room, and they've housed 5, 6, 7, 8 different families over the course of 60, 70 years. I mean, they're fine houses. Builders never come with that housing stock, ever. And, about making some demands. It's like, look, we need smaller housing. I don't need another $450,000 house to put some young person in debt. Can you build this? If not, move along, right? I think we always just kind of accept what these builders bring because that's what they want. And it's like, can you build small little houses on small little lots? And are we willing to fudge what, zoning we have? Because, in the past, it's always like, oh, no, you got to build McMansions or everybody's going to be mad. So are we willing to build something that's affordable like people did 80 years ago when they built, houses in our downtown? Are we willing to do that? I hope that's a challenge for us, and then facing blowback, because it's, say, for instance, Serenity Springs, we convinced them to do one of their sections with small housing, and then nearby neighbors are going to be, oh my God, that's Unless you build a house that's more expensive than my house, I'm going to complain at a city council meeting. So that's stuff that we would have to, gird our loins over. And then I think another challenge is that your idea of having, say, 4 or 5 kind of housing stock plans, that's like, look, you can avoid almost $20,000, in fees and architect drawings, all this stuff, if you just use one of these pre-approved. I think it's a great idea. I would say our challenge is something that we faced when we did sprinkler grants. I remember Janine suffered from this. They told them, hey, man, make sure you apply for that sprinkler grant, because you get, all they did was tack on $5,000 extra to their bill. They didn't reduce their costs. So it's like, how do you make sure that if somebody's going to get $20,000 off their bill, it's not like, this is sweet, I can pocket this. How does that translate into a house that's $20,000 cheaper? Those are things that I think would be a challenge for us to keep an eye on. And how do we resolve that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the challenge between the private market and the public desires. You will see some requests from the Serenity Landing project with their rental single family for smaller lots, and their homes will be smaller. We can't dictate size of home or minimum size or maximum size of home because it doesn't, it goes against federal fair housing laws. But that doesn't mean that we can't encourage it, but there are always a lot of factors that go into the house price. It's the cost of the land, it's the cost of building new streets, it's the cost of extending water, sanitaries, storm, gas, all the different components to that. It's the cost of retention, it's the cost of, there's a whole series of things that build up that stack that ultimately identify that cost, which is why it's always so hard to build new with that in that category, because it's very difficult to do unless you start to get the low-income housing tax credits. You get some of those things that, from your standpoint, you're right on, and it's the same with the Plan Commission. You will be confronted by residents who, the minute they hear low-income housing tax credits, or they hear, small lot sizes, or they hear small houses and things like that, you'll get a lot of outcry. And if this is a direction that both groups feel is important for the diversity and the livability of Lockport, that's something that you'll need to understand going into it, and expect that to be the case. As all of you who were here during the Redwood process, that was challenging. And all the council members and all the Plan Commission members did a phenomenal job of supporting a product that clearly has a need, with a 45-person waiting list on it before they are even half built. They only have occupancy for like 8 of their buildings now, but they are rolling through those things extremely quickly because of the construction type. But it came with a lot of heartburn that all of you really did well to support the community to try and bring that product into Lockport. So you're right. You're 100% right. It comes with a lot of challenges as well.
Builders, they don't want to build something small because the cost, it doesn't matter if it's small or big, the cost is there, like you said, for the lot and for the material. It's still expensive for them, and so if they're going to spend that kind of money, they'd rather gain it on a larger home with the upgrades and things like that.
It's also one of the reasons why we went to an average lot size as opposed to a minimum lot size, because it allows some builders, if they truly want to diversify their product, they could have really tiny lots and then have some larger lots to offset that and create the average that would meet the zoning code requirements. So that offers some of that flexibility. So, whether it's combined with the zoning code rewrite that we did 2 years ago now, or combined with the impact fee reworking that we did, or combined with some pre-approved plans, or combined with some interest and flexibility from the Council and Plan Commission on some modifications from our zoning code, all of those things lend to little bits, bit by bit, lower costs that a builder has to incur, and likely also comes with more units, because they're not just going to simply leave it all as open space because you do smaller lots. You're going to have more units that come onto the site because they need to leverage that cost out across the rest of the property to make their nut.
Well, one thing I can say is over the past 10 years, what I believed the housing concepts were at that stage, which was what I, grow up, buy a house, and live there for 40 years, I've learned that just simply is not America anymore. And I know it's challenging to think outside our preconceived notions, but I agree with what you presented, and I agree that we need to have. Good thing is we have looked at housing stock differently than many communities, and we've been successful wherein everybody predicted failure. So,
Lance, is it possible to get a summary of those pre-planned housing types that are available off the shelf?
So we would need to engage an architect to design those
Okay.
for us.
We don't have any currently.
Right, we do not have any currently. There are companies that produce them, and, we would want to make sure that they're tweaked to kind of our lot standards and that kind of thing, but offer a range of
Sure.
options as well as kind of base models. It's almost like the city creating the range of models that an MI Homes or a Lennar or somebody like that would create on their own.
Yeah. I'd imagine you could shift house size. I mean,
Right,
by planning that
Yes.
appropriately, you could not offer a McMansion.
yeah. It's something that I hope to include in my budget request for next year.
Great. Thank you.
All right, friends, anything else? Well, thank you very much, Lance, and thanks to the folks who participated in it. And anything from planning and zoning? Comments, thoughts, concerns?
We could go on forever, Steve, with that. Lance is correct. We've got to get a balance of the size of the lots, and then we get the pushback from residents that have a bigger lot, that had to have a bigger lot, and they have a smaller lot. If we want to do it, we have to do it. Maybe the parcel on 151st east of Farrell, we could try something there with X amount of square footage or something like that. And as Rodney Kennelly pointed out one time when we were talking about our design guidelines, we don't need the brick and the this and the this to make a house look good. I mean, brick versus vinyl is almost triple the per square foot cost. So if we could reduce some of those requirements and do the design, and Lance had some designs on a project we were working on with just different pitches of the roofs and stuff of that nature, you can reduce the cost of the house some, but you're still with building permit costs and tap-on fees, you're at $25,000 to $30,000. So, and right now, the average cost is $300 a square foot for a house. And of course, everything plays into that, all the designs and the brick and the mortar. And if you go back 30, 40 years ago when they had the own and completion houses, this year they built the house, next year they built the garage, following year they did a driveway and their landscaping. Well, now everybody wants it all done before they move in. They want a 4-car garage and everything done, which is, so you go from one end of the spectrum to the other with that.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I'm sure everybody will noodle this stuff over and, oh, I'm sorry, Billy, what do you got?
The Lance is saying, the developer can't build a new house for much under $300,000. You're talking about a stick-built house on site. There's such a thing as modular housing where the components are built off-site, that's where they put together. Our code would allow modular type housing construction. I'm not talking about different white trailers, I'm talking about urban homes. With a modular concept that the code would allow, might try to be able to bring down the cost of bringing up a new house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the expert panel folks was a builder of modular homes. They fabricate them, they've got the factory on the floor, and I actually invited him to look at a site out here, but I asked him how much the units would cost, and it's about $350,000, even the modular standpoint. Now, he said that, as time goes by, their processes become more efficient, costs come down, financing is more helpful, that's when they can start to drive down cost. But, you oftentimes hear about what are the incentives that we can get in order to build what you want. And that's always the next question that you'll get from anybody, where we would say, we want you to build smaller homes, and they say, we can't, but we will if you do X, Y, and Z. You give us an extra $10,000 per home, or you, whatever. Those are the challenges. But I mean, it's a good point. When that gets to the point where it can level out, I think there are all kinds of opportunities. But there are manufactured homes that are more commonly associated with mobile home parks. And when we look at truly affordable that are hitting that market that has less than $50,000 household income, regardless of whether it's a modular home or a manufactured home, that's likely the home reality of what that means.
Speaking from experience with modular homes, the average cost on a 1,500 square foot versus stick build is about $4,000 to $5,000. Where you save is the time. You're not into a 6-month project, you're in a 2-month project. So you save on the interest on the construction loan. The actual cost is $5,000 to $6,000, and it's a well-built house. But that's where you're at.
I think you also have to consider, if you're going to have smaller lots and smaller homes, you're going to have higher density, and density will bring more challenges as well. Brent will tell you that you will need more retention ponds and more pipe and all kinds of things that would affect infrastructure with the higher density as well. So there's pros and cons to everything.
Scott, what do you?
I was just going to say, density helps in multifamily housing, going vertical. On the senior side too, Joey, elevators are part of every multifamily house or multifamily building. We see more projects move forward that are multi-story in senior to make them more affordable. Not Section 8 just affordable. As Lance said, when you have a memory care program, yes, 1 story is ideal for that setting.
Okay. All right, friends. Well, all stuff to think about, noodle on, and feel free to send in your thoughts and suggestions to Lance and to Dave, and let's just keep exploring this, because it is important. All right, friends.
So for the sake of open meetings, I need a motion by one of the planning and zoning commissioner to adjourn their meeting.
Accept the motion to adjourn the planning commission meeting. Second. Motion by Lykin, second by Maloney. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, crew. Appreciate it. All right, then, rolling along. FN1, the budget calendar.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the annual calendar for our budget. We're going to kick off on August 14th. We'll be looking to meet with elected officials in October. We'll present to the public November 1st. The tax levy will be presented in November 15th, and we'll be looking for approval for both by December 6th. So time's flying already.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got, Lisa, FN2?
We have the presentation of the 2022 audited financial statements. We have Dave Jelonic from GW and Associates that's going to do a presentation. A copy of the audit was all placed at your dais in your spot there, so it's all your floor.
Good evening. I don't know what it is when the audit comes up, people always leave. So,
You can clear a room, man. Yeah.
so I'm happy to say Lockport is no different than anywhere else I go. Once the audit report comes up, people get out. So, I think that's the cue to me to keep it short and sweet. So it was our first year. Again, as Lisa mentioned, I'm Dave Jelonic, partner at GW and Associates. I oversaw the audit engagement this year. It was our first year doing the audit out here. You had Sikich for several years before. The first year of an engagement is always a getting to know you process. Lisa and her staff are getting to know us, what type of information we're looking for. Much of it will be very similar to Sikich, but there's always some nuances. Different firms do different things. And we're getting used to what Lisa and her staff provide us. I can honestly say that out of all the first-year audits I have been through, this was probably the easiest. Lisa and her staff do a great job. Ready by late March, less than 3 months after year end. Provided virtually all our requests in late March, and to really have a successful audit, not only do you need the auditor to do their job, but you need the person being audited being ready for the audit. And Lisa and her team were ready for that audit. I'm actually going to ask you if I can borrow her to go to some of my other clients that aren't as ready to show them how to prepare for an audit. But the annual comprehensive financial report we prepared, that's the large document. We helped prepare that, but it is management's responsibility, as we discuss in the opinion. And again, even though we've prepared it, Lisa and Maggie looked over it with a fine-tooth comb, and then we worked together to put together the financial statements. Our audit opinion, which comes after the introductory section, was a clean, unmodified opinion, so that means the figures and information that is presented in the footnotes, we feel that that information is fairly stated, representative of the fiscal year end 2022. I believe we only had one journal entry of any kind. It was a reclassification entry. Again, just telling you the level of accuracy that your finance department has. In addition to the annual comprehensive financial report, we also issued a TIF compliance report. We find the city to be in compliance with TIF laws. We also issued a management letter. There's no issues. There was no issue in the management letter. We had no findings. So again, good job here at the city. And then we have a SAS 114 audit communication to the board. It's a two-page, three-page letter. Again, just very high level, just goes over the audit. As far as financial results go, again, if you look government-wide, so that's where we lump together governmental activities and business-type activities, your water fund, positive equity. So that's a good thing. Assets are exceeding liabilities and there. And then also at the fund level, so all your individual funds. No inter-fund borrowing. So again, that's showing that your individual funds are self-sufficient or just relying on any budgeted transfers you have between funds. So again, a clean audit. The results were favorable. General fund is spent within budget this year. Again, it was a very easy transition on our end. I hope Lisa feels the same way going from Sikich, and we look forward to working with Lisa and her team in the future in the city as well. So,
Right on. So we getting a thumbs up?
thumbs up, 2 thumbs up.
Nice.
There we go.
Bravo, Lisa and crew.
Yep.
Couldn't
Dave,
do
can I
it with
get
all the staff.
spelling of your last name, sorry.
Oh, it's Jelonek.
Okay, thank you.
Well, sir, thank you for coming out. Appreciate the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Next on there, we've got Sunny. We've got a amendment to Chapter 131 for firearm.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, the item is an amendment to Chapter 131 that will close the loophole regarding discharging a firearm within the city limits. Currently, we have an ordinance that prohibits people from hunting in the city, but obviously, this is a well-populated area. We don't want people to just shoot their firearms unless, of course, they're defending their property themselves, or, if you're a law enforcement officer. So this kind of closes that loophole. If there are areas that are annexed in that specifically provides for an exemption from, firing a firearm, that's also covered, but this was requested by our police chief and supported by the police, and if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thoughts, question, concerns?
Yes.
In areas that would be north and west of the city, like beyond Farrell, Farrell, west of Farrell, that's like not incorporated Lockport or otherwise, that's just like Will County?
Yes, that's Will County. So this covers only the city boundaries. So if it's unincorporated, they're not supposed to be shooting a firearm within distance of a residential home. So that's a state statute. So they're still governed by that statute, but this is within the city limits.
So if we have residents that are on like 151st and Farrell that way, and there's property west of them that's unincorporated, and they hear gunshots like that, I mean, they should be able to call Will County to shut that down, right?
Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And they may be too close to residential homes. But there's, I don't know if the chief wants to add anything.
Yeah, how close is it? Because it seems like they can get pretty close. I remember we had some problems further south in town, and the sheriff's like, yeah, they're allowed to do it. What's the distance?
Yeah, as far as the distance go, I don't know the exact number, but we do get calls from the, Will County Sheriff's jurisdiction. They do get calls, and if they're on Will County Sheriff's property and they're not firing off weapons in the direction of any homes, they'll allow them to continue to fire off weapons out there. So it's kind of tough, to your point, Pat, is that county will go out there, and if they're in county's jurisdiction and they're not doing anything reckless, they'll let them continue to shoot out there. We lacked the ability to enforce firing off these firearms within the city limits of Lockport. We've had situations before where we've had a SWAT team show up, and then you turn around and look at what you're going to charge somebody with, and you have a couple options. One is reckless discharge, but you have to prove that somebody was in danger, fired off around into the ground, or they had a target set up away from the homes like we've had in certain areas. We really weren't able to enforce any law. So this allows us to eliminate that. I don't know if that answers your question or
It
not.
does. Thank you.
I think it's like 100 or 300 yards. I remember the incident out by Cedar Ridge a few years ago, and they were on an unincorporated parcel hunting, and the county sheriff came out and everything, but it was within guidelines. It's pretty close, if you think about it.
The ordinance takes away our ability to shoot back.
Right.
No, that's self-defense. I mean, if someone protecting yourself.
Claim self-defense and shoot back.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why, like, bow-fired weapons aren't included in that?
In some cases, we saw that they were incorporated. We didn't want to minimize it to the point where somebody couldn't set up a safe area to do that. I mean, really, what we end up with more so than not is the firearms. We did include the pellet guns and the BB guns because they do some damage as well, and people can be badly hurt with those. We could have incorporated that if that's what council would like to see. We could add that to it. But I want to make sure that we did have something that covered us with the firearms.
Yeah. I'd be more inclined to take the air gun and BB
Yeah, I was surprised to see that in there too.
as opposed to leaving those in, personally. Firearms for sure. What's that?
Could you just speak a little bit louder?
Oh, sure. I'd be more, like, if we're not including the bow-fired weapons, I'd be, personally, be more inclined to take off the BB and I think it was BB and pellet.
Yeah.
Air fire.
So some of the BB guns, if you've heard of the high-powered ones, they actually sound like 22 caliber. They're loud.
Yeah.
And some people don't know whether those are or are not air rifles, and they are pretty loud, so we got to consider,
I would say, though, that if, I don't care how loud it is, if it's not, firearm, that's just, you gotta get over it. I mean, if somebody's like, just doesn't like the sound of it and it makes them nervous, but it's still a BB gun or pellet gun, I kind of agree with Jonathan on that. I used to shoot BB guns in my backyard. I hate the idea of.
But if it looks like something dangerous,
Yeah, but I mean, that's like,
I mean,
That's like banning scary people. I mean, it's like, if it just looks scary, I mean,
Well, what if a police officer has to get involved and it looks like something?
sure. And then they go and investigate and they realize it's not. Now, it's different if you're telling me, and I don't think we really had this kind of struggle, where somebody's waving a pellet gun at you that looks like a real gun. I don't think that's been the concern here. I think really this kind of came up mainly because we had to deal with, the junkyard guy shooting his guns back there. So it's like we really didn't have anything on the books. I think overcorrecting for this, I don't think is the right move. I'm partial to removing the BB guns and pellet guns.
I'm like you, I shot him as a kid, and
Right.
it was in our basement, but does that, I mean, within
Sure.
the house, I don't think that's any different than in the city, in
Right.
this case, right?
Is that more so if they create damage from a BB gun, where you have more enforcement options?
When people, we do get calls of people firing off BB guns in the backyards. It does create some concern. I mean, I looked at different ordinances. Some towns, they banned it altogether. Some villages, same thing. Some of them, you had to get permission from the police department, tell them exactly what you're going to be out there shooting. But it is up to city council. The biggest thing for me is, again, you're talking about, firearms was our biggest concern, but a lot of those ordinances also added in there the firing off the pellet guns, the air-powered rifles.
Okay. Well, we can do a hands, who wants to remove or keep it in there. But before we do that, is there any other thoughts, concerns on this piece? All right. So why don't we, I guess just do a show of hands. How many people want to remove the pellet gun or BB guns? And then we'll ask how many people want to keep it in. Or if you're partial to removing it from it and not banning those.
Jonathan, can you just, one more time, just to go ahead and say exactly what you want?
Oh, sure. Let me pull up I think it's two, it says, it shall be unlawful for any person to discharge any firearms, air guns, or BB guns. I would just propose removing air guns or BB guns from within the limits of the city. In the few places, B and D, I think it mentions air guns and BB guns.
And let me ask you another question. Would that inadvertently tell the paintball park that they can't shoot they do airsoft?
They're exempt. So I did write into the exemption that it's not, it doesn't apply for any lawfully established outdoor recreational or training businesses.
Okay.
So they're exempt from it.
Okay. All right, so is everybody clear what Jonathan was asking?
Rich, does that take away any enforcement issues that you might have?
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this is for you to enforce, and we're telling you how to enforce it. You let us know what gray it creates.
Yeah, I with you there. Like if it's going to cause a safety issue with your officers because you got kids in a backyard.
I mean, yeah, of course, when we get calls, to, a lot of times it won't be that there's kids out in the backyard firing off BB guns or something. Someone's out in the backyard with a rifle. Is there concern? There's always concern, right? We approach it as if it's any other weapon, so there's that concern. People get concerned when they see handguns and rifles. I mean, you mentioned we were kids. Yep, it was different when we were kids. I understand. The other thing we run into is these airsoft, these BB guns. They look like real guns. People do get shot by the police with what looks like, a pellet, what looks like a real gun, and it ends up being a BB gun. It happens. I worry also with concealed carry and FOIDs that there might be a neighbor who sees somebody out there and somebody else gets hurt by some other resident. But really, if the council decides that that's not something we want to enforce, I understand. But the discharge of the firearms, I think that we can agree that that's very important in the city.
All right, so why don't we say it this way? How many guys want to leave the ordinance as is, keeping the BB guns and stuff, and just put your hand up so we know. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so the majority of everybody just wants to leave it in as is then, the way it's written. So BB guns, pellet guns will also be not lawfully discharged in the city.
Should we then be adding crossbows, compound bows?
I didn't want to
mean,
add BB guns, so
Yeah.
there you go. Rock throwing, yeah, so.
Or slingshots, or
But a police officer would be
if I was a police officer and somebody had a crossbow pointed at me, I'd be much more threatened than anything else.
Well, I think that if what I'm hearing from other council members is there's the concern that, and from the chief, is that sometimes these firearms look so real, they cause concern that it's an actual firearm, a higher caliber weapon, as opposed to a bow and arrow is a bow and arrow. Kids are out in the backyard shooting, so, yeah. Let's put it up for action item, and then we'll leave it as is.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate in the world that we live in right now that when we were kids, having their Red Ryder BB gun is different than today's world where, real or not, it's a concern, so unfortunately.
Okay. All right, so action for that. Any new business, friends? Looked like you were ready to say something. No? No, I was just turning it off. Pressing your button. All right. If there's nothing else, then we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, so it was Joanne and Patrick. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Just need a moment for Sunny to
Yep.
turn everything over.
I take 5 here as Sonny gets squared away.
Thank you.
What, this is overkill? Oh, no.
That's why we all have poked out eyes.
That what?
Not that hell.
Oh, Jonathan's still not back.
I got more important stuff.
Good, Sonny?
Yes, so Mayor Strike,
Yeah.
we have Alderwoman Sabins absent, Alderwoman Bartison,
Here.
Alderwoman Bergbauer,
Present.
Alderman Deskin,
Here.
Alderman Glogly,
Here.
Alderman McDonald,
Here.
Alderman Karas.
Here.
And Alderman Pugh.
Present.
Quorum present.
All right, so looking for a motion to have a consent agenda. Joanne? Seconded by Patrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion, or we're looking to approve committee of the whole meeting minutes from May 17th, regular city council meeting minutes from May 17th. Whoop, not yet. Our reappointments of Nick and Ron to the Lockport Heritage and Architecture Commission, reappointment of Joe Piper to the Police Pension, appointment of Joe Young to the Board of Police Commissioners, reappointments of Catherine, Ray, Suggs, Lance, an appointment of Alderman Deskin to the International Code Council Board of Appeals, our appointment of Kyle Quinn, reappointment of Aaron Peters to the City Lockport Planning and Zoning, our bills through May 30th, our payroll period ending May 14th and May 18th and May 28th, approval for professional services with V3 for the Phase 2 environmental assessment at State Street, and then accept proposal for water and sewer rate study from Baxter and Woodman for a total not to exceed 25-1. So we're looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, Pat and JR, gotta do a roll call, Sonny.
Yes. So we have Pugh. Yes. Karas.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Glogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Sabins absent. Motion passes.
All right. Next, we're looking for a motion to approve this is AT1. It's a oh, I got to read the annexation here letter. You want me to start with that, Sonny?
Yes.
Sorry, let me get my paper out. So, okay, so this is a amendment to the annexation agreement for Lot 6 for the Lockport Square at Farrell to do the self-storage unit. So, doing the public hearing. Public hearing here, as required by state law governing annexation agreements and amendments, the city council has to hold a public hearing to consider the second amendment to the annexation agreement that applies to lot number 6 in Lockport Square at Farrell Road, development for the self-storage use. So I'm going to make a motion to open the public hearing. After that passes, Sonny will briefly outline the proposed second amendment to the annexation. After that, we'll ask anyone in the audience if they want to be heard, and then there'll be a motion to close the public hearing. So, looking for a motion to approve, or looking for a motion to have a public hearing on this topic.
I'll make that motion.
JR? Seconded by Jonathan. Very good. All right, so we're having a public hearing now. So, Sonny, you want to lay it on us here?
Was there a voice vote? Voice vote to approve opening the public hearing?
What's that?
Was there a voice vote? I'm sorry.
We haven't approved opening the hearing yet.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay, yeah. So this item was discussed at the last committee of the whole. Basically, it's a sort of like a cleanup amendment, a second amendment to the annexation agreement for Lockport Square at Farrell Development for Lot 6 to ratify what was already done, which was the rezoning from C2 to C3 to allow for the height increase for the 4-story self-storage facility, and also to allow the application of the 2021 International Building Code to be applied to the construction of the building instead of the current 2015 IBC code that the city adopted. And that's basically why we're amending the annexation agreement. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to entertain them. Just for the record, we did publish the notice of today's meeting to comply with the statutory requirement, and everything was done by the book and notification made.
All right, very good. Anybody have any thoughts, questions up here? Anyone in the audience? It's a public hearing. Any thoughts, concerns you want to share? Okay. So if there's nothing else, then we'll do a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Joanne, JR, all in favor? All right, so now we need a motion to approve Resolution 23049 for the Second Amendment to the annexation agreement for lot number 6 in the subdivision known as Lockport Square at Farrell Road. So, looking for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Christina, JR, and we'll do a roll call.
Pugh.
Yes.
Karis.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes?
Saban's absent, motion passes. Oh, and the mayor, you get to vote, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next we're looking, Public Works, so we're looking for a motion to accept the quote for the aeration tank repairs for the amount of $81,250. So we're looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, JR and Pat, any questions? Oh, Matt, I'm sorry, man. So- All those deep voices over there, I can't tell the difference, man. So, any questions, concerns, thoughts? Anything you need to update on, Brent, or is it the same as what we had? Okay. Then, we'll do a roll call.
Yes. Pugh.
Yes.
Karis.
Yes.
McDonald. Yes. Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes?
Saban's absent, motion passes.
All right. Next, we're looking for a motion to approve the 2023 sanitary sewer cleaning and televising project to Sewer Tech LLC for the amount of 60 grand. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Joanne and Matt, any questions, concerns on this one?
I have a question. I was just a little confused by the high engineering costs on this project, $38,000, and the project itself is only $60,000. I was wondering if Brent had an answer on why he thinks it was so high.
Yep. Don't have an exact answer for you other than pulled a little information here. That contract included design, construction observation, tape review, final report, and then a repair location for next year's projects. So it provides a GIS located incident location map. So there is a lot that's done. Now, it does take a lot to review these tapes. It's as boring as you can imagine. It is literally watching these tapes and reviewing these tapes of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet, thousands of feet of sanitary sewer. And so there is no way to do it other than to sit and watch it. So it is labor intensive. The other thing that I will mention is that we anticipated $100,000 on this construction price. Great bids came in. We got $60,000 was our lowest bid. The highest bidder, I want to make sure I give you the right number here, but the highest bidder was over $200,000, so $205,770. So on a project, if they were to be the low bidder, $200,000. If you had a $40,000 engineering number, that's about where we want to be. I do feel like it's a little higher than I necessarily would like to say, but the other thing that I did look at while we were preparing for this, we've spent $8,500 to date on the design, so out of the $38,000, we've only spent $8,000 to date. So again, as always, not to exceed. If we go through these and there's not a lot of repairs or a lot of instances that need GIS location, that'll not to exceed number should hopefully stay well below that.
All right, thanks, JR. Anything else? And we'll do a roll call, please.
Brent, can I ask a question real quick? Brent, are they doing location on where they're entering the sewers and then measuring off from that point? Or do they go back and then re-scope the sewer to figure out exactly where that incident was?
Yeah, so when you actually look at the tape, there's a footage in the upper corner, so you're watching that tape, and so basically as they get to that location, then they'll say 102 feet right, and they'll be able to put that in our system GIS, so they don't have to go actually physically back out to the field.
And they're the ones that are putting the data in as opposed to our staff?
Correct, they are, yes. Yep.
Someday you'll have to show us the tape.
It's fascinating, really fascinating, yep.
All right, so then we'll do a roll call.
Okay. Pugh. Yes. Karas.
Yes.
McDonald. Yes. Gallogley.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Brookbauer.
Yes.
And Bartleson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, me friends, anything under new business? And if,
I have a request for 2C2 executive session for collective bargaining.
okay,
I make a motion to go into a closed meeting under Section 2C2 of the OMA to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. In addition, Section 2C3 of the OMA to discuss the selection of a person to fill a public office, including a vacancy in a public office.
all right, so we got 2 topics for executive session.
Yes.
All right, everybody, and I need a motion to do that? Well, we have one, do we need a second?
There was a motion, I need a second.
Any seconds for our,
I'll
all
second that.
right, Darren, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we will now move over to the chamber for executive session.